Ladies and gentlemen, in this frenzy and hysteria to ban anything related to Russia or impose as many sanctions as possible, which, by the way, aren't stopping them militarily. So you're actually hurting the Russian people, not the government. But anyway, in this absolute propaganda-driven apoplectic hysteria, and by the way, I support Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. God bless the men and women in Ukraine, putting up the most heroic, brave, noble fight against overwhelming odds and a global superpower. So it's taking a lot longer than Putin and Russia expected because of the military and the people in Ukraine defending their country. The problem, however, is that the United States should be part of a solution or a peace deal or a ceasefire or a peace treaty. Not simply just wait back until Russia eventually gets into Kiev and starts occupying. Oil now is a huge issue. Inflation is skyrocketing. The Fed isn't going to do anything other than maybe raise interest rates 25 basis points, even if they go 50 basis points in this, next week or so, in the next 2 weeks, that's not going to make a difference. And so Biden, understandably, it's like one of the few rational things that he's actually done, even though it's counterproductive, considering what he wants to accomplish, is that he's opposing the bipartisan bill to ban Russian imports, which are about 7%. 7% of our oil imports are from Russia. And he doubled crude oil imports last year from Russia. And that we know that from a PolitiFact article that said the U.S., we have doubled, so mostly false. We have not doubled our imports from Russia in the last year. And then, of course, we know the most recent, the U.S. did double the amount of crude oil imports from Russia last year. So if your time is short, PolitiFact actually explains, yes, the U.S. did double the amount of crude oil imports from Russia last year. But the headline is mostly false. Maria Bartiromo, we have doubled our oil imports from Russia last year. So we doubled our crude oil imports, and it's now 7% or so of U.S. oil imports, around 7%. If I'm wrong about that number, let me know in the comments section. It's about 7%. So how do you go ahead, even if you ban... So the White House and Biden, they're opposed to this, which makes sense, but they put themselves in this situation because of this apoplectic, hysterical, it started with a new Cold War after Clinton lost to Trump. They blamed Russia as a scapegoat. Now, it's wrong what Russia's doing to invade Ukraine, but we knew that would happen. All we had to do is negotiate some kind of deal that said, okay, Ukraine won't join NATO, but then you have to, pull out of eastern Ukraine or give back Crimea, which he wouldn't have done, but at least there could have been some negotiation. The NATO, the US, the West refused to negotiate with Putin. Absolutely. So now Ukraine is stuck in the middle between two global superpowers, and we have a nuclear confrontation now, which is what I told everybody would happen. But Manchin and others, hit subscribe to this channel right now. I will have a live stream tonight at around 10:30 p.m. So be here for the live stream at 10:30 p.m. They're going to impeach Biden. They're going to impeach Biden for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons could be the impending stock market crash that I already predicted. And we're seeing it take place in slow motion, in part because oil now is what? Oil prices are now at over $112. Brent crude was at $116 last night. You have oil that's going to go above all-time highs. I'm about to sneeze. You have oil that's going to go above all-time highs, over 147. Inflation is going to go well over 7.5% to 10%. Okay? Probably more than that. They're not going to have They're not going to be able to handle inflation. And we'll talk about this tonight in the live stream at about 10:30 p.m. Pacific. We have 0% growth according to the Atlanta Fed GDP Now estimate for the first quarter. It was negative percent growth. 2 consecutive negative quarters is a recession. We're heading into a recession. We're not stopping Russia militarily. Okay, that's not happening. Unfortunately, we're utilizing Ukraine. I mean, the media is not talking about this, but what's really taking place is NATO, the West, the U.S., Biden, Democrats, and never Trump Republicans are utilizing Ukraine to fight or to oppose Vladimir Putin and Russia, rather than simply come up with an agreement that said, look, Ukraine won't join NATO. I don't know why it's in NATO's interest or in the U.S. interests for Ukraine to join, other than simply to provoke or to be belligerent towards Russia, knowing very well that its top national security objective is ensuring Ukraine never joins. Now, if Canada or if Mexico joined a military alliance created by Russia and China, we would never allow that. So for everybody saying, oh, Putin is a thug, we would have done the same thing. We had the Monroe Doctrine. We wouldn't allow communist rebels, and we opposed communist factions within Latin America, overthrowing leaders, all during the Cold War, funding rebel groups or opposing rebel groups, depending on whether or not they were communist. We wouldn't allow an entire hemisphere to be influenced by Russia or by the USSR or by European powers in the 1800s. So we had the Monroe Doctrine that ensured that the Western Hemisphere wouldn't be influenced by Europe, and then later by the USSR with the Cold War, the Truman Doctrine. So that's similar to what Russia is doing, which is I'm opposed to it, but it's, again, if you look at things from realpolitik, just a realist perspective, this is what's taking. Biden knew what was taking place. Biden, he waived sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Okay, waived sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Okay, bad. Shouldn't have done that. Now he wants to, actually, in the most despicable, the dumbest move of all time, he's thinking about sanctions against India. The second largest market, second largest economy in the world, a strategic ally of the United States, very, very large military and powerful military, nuclear power, a country that's going to surpass the United States in, 10 years, 15 years, economically. And Biden wants to sanction them because they have weaponry from Russia, while we import 7% of Russian oil that Biden doesn't want to ban. And I understand where he's coming from, Biden, because if we ban Russian oil, how do we then replace it? There's no way to replace it immediately. Commodity prices, oil is linked to every part of commerce and industry and capitalism. The country does not run if oil prices get too high up. Or I should say, the country doesn't run with oil. The global economy doesn't run without oil. And you could say bye-bye to any the preaching and the sermons from Bill and I and the climate change activists. It's very important. Combating climate change is very important. The entire world, including all the Democrats, have jettisoned all of their concerns pertaining to the end of the planet because of a climate catastrophe, just with one geopolitical crisis. So their oil spiking through the roof, causing inflation to continue to go up. We're heading into a recession. The stock market is going to absolutely collapse. So hit subscribe to the Stock Market Crash channel. I had an amazing live stream on that channel a little while back. But what does Biden do? He can't simply go along and ban Russian oil. Because he can't. There's no way to. He didn't think it through. There's no way to replace 6 to 8% of U.S. oil imports within a matter of months or weeks. It's going to be more than 10 cents. They say 10 cents added. It'll be more than that. It'll be far more than that. Okay? For a number of reasons. And Lord knows what happens to commodity prices. Commodities are tied directly to the price of oil. Lord knows what happens to manufacturing. I mean, we're already heading into a recession. We're already right about to have a monumental biblical stock market collapse. So, I mean, it's like this is Democrats. Democrats are running. Democrats are everything bad that's taking place. All the fears, all the paranoid, hysterical, apoplectic fears that Trump would, destroy democracy and our economy and global, geopolitics and, usher the world into this ice age or this nuclear confrontation. All of it's happening under Biden's watch. Inflation, recession, stock market collapse. And that's unfortunately going to happen. And I wrote about that and predicted it in the Federalist in October. He's lost his mind, mashed potato brains Biden, so much so he even wants to sanction India, which is so such a mindless reaction and such a hypocritical reaction considering we take 7% of our imports in oil from Russia, and they doubled crude imports from Russia in 2021. Oh, who was president then? Oh, that's right, Biden. He waived Nord Stream 2 sanctions, but he also refused to allow Ukraine into NATO. I mean, the biggest hypocrites on the planet. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. What does Biden do? He has to oppose this bipartisan bill, which, by the way, Republicans know very well. It's going to force Democrats to then drill and allow more drilling within the United States of America. Democrats don't want that because they want to combat climate change. So it's like, anyway, give me your thoughts below. This is an absolute unmitigated catastrophe for Biden. Mashed potato brains outdid himself in terms, the botched Doha agreement that Trump negotiated to reverse U.S. foreign policy that Biden voted for. Those 13 Americans should be alive today. Those 100 plus Afghans should be alive today. Biden is like an unmitigated disaster in terms of foreign policy, but also in terms of economic policy. Now he's faced with the decision of, does he really want to back up the tough talk? Because you could take a billionaire's yacht. That's not going to make a difference at all. This is like a lot of this is public relations. Okay, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, they're not dismantling it. Germany is waiting, and the EU is waiting for everything to subside, and then a couple of months from now or a year from now, it'll start pumping gas and oil, fossil fuels to Europe. And at the end of the day, Ukraine, unfortunately, will have to negotiate with Russia, and Putin will get exactly what he wanted, some kind of assurance that Ukraine doesn't join NATO. Because we already know that Biden refused to even acknowledge President Zelensky's request. He denied President Zelensky's request. That's a DW.com article and other articles. And NATO says, well, it's up to you, Ukraine. It's like, well, most of what all of this is about. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. I mean, it's unbelievable. Ukraine asked to join NATO. NATO said, nah. And now they're in the middle of a devastating war with Russia. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Be here on the live stream at 10:30 p.m.